If we look back to the early 2000s, it really started with a advertising concept when you started to see high-end apartment complexes put a sign out front, and it famously said, live, work, play. Like you drive by these and you're like, okay, well, what is that? In development, you really started seeing that in the early 2000s, and they were kind of advertising like, hey, this building or this complex is close to work, it's got a pool, it's got a fitness center, and everything is close by. Well, the best definition I could find of this concept architecturally is that when you have intentionally built environments that are integrating residential, professional, and recreational spaces designed to be welcoming to all. Okay, and so this is a concept where you can drive around Tri-Cities right now, and I guarantee you can find like 5 of these signs. Half of them, I think, are false advertising. That's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. But you are starting to see this concept in a market like Tri-Cities. So before, you would see this in like Seattle or Nashville or Phoenix. And I think a lot of people, go on vacation, right? Or you travel and you go to some of these cities. And what's the first thing that people do like an hour and a half into a vacation that they're having a really good time at? They will look at their spouse and say, gosh, we should move here. And they'll say to each other, like, we should, this is great. We should live here. Probably 50% of the reason is great is that they're not at work. But you always end up saying that. And I'm the worst because I'm in the industry. Like, I'm off the plane and like 5 minutes later, I'm grabbing like real estate brochures and looking around. But now this concept is coming to secondary markets. And with Tri-Cities being like a secondary market, this is why you see people advertising this live, work, play concept. And so a great example of this that I can give, I was driving around this weekend. And so off of Union and 24th, a couple colleagues and buddies that I know, they built a development out there called the Falls. And it's I think it's 5 stories. It's like a 5-story apartment complex, and it's kind of behind the Synergy Center and Costa Vida and back over there. And so it's really interesting because in this concept, on the lower level, they have commercial spaces. Okay, so they have different types, 1-bedroom studios, 3 bedrooms, but then they have commercial spaces on the main level. And then it's located in a spot that has access to parks, and you've got the Kennewick Library over there. And so when you look at this live, work, play concept, I mean, let me like paint a picture for you. Like if somebody was filming a commercial for this, you roll out of bed in the morning, you go downstairs. There's a yoga studio in the commercial space at the bottom of you take a yoga class. You leave that class, you grab a cup of coffee. You have coffee there at a coffee shop that's within right by your building. You take a quick stroll across the street. You go over to the library. You read a book. You do some remote work.
I've seen a number of these over on the west side.
Exactly. Well, they're here in Tri-Cities now, and there's more proposed. And so the big thing about that, and then you take your dog for a walk at the park over there, and you haven't had to step foot inside your car. That's the concept, and that's the commercial, and it's not a bad gig. And when you look around Tri-Cities, you've had different builders start to kind of take this to the next level. The next thing that comes to mind is like Polish Homes, for instance. The last couple communities that Polish have done, they've put big community centers and larger pools. They've got like amazing fitness centers. They did one out at Horn Rapids. They did one up at the top of Westcliff. And so you're getting these community center areas that have fitness center, and they have swimming and a place for you to hang out in the summer. Another builder, Titan Homes, for instance, if you look at Columbia Trail, they've got Jericho Ridge up there. Great spot to be because you can walk to Cozy Cup and grab a cup of coffee. You can get to the Chamna Trail. You can jump right on the trail and go to Chamna and walk around the nature preserve. And then you can do wine tasting at the wineries across the street and meet your friends for dinner at Fiction. And once again, you haven't even gotten in your car.
Yeah.
And so you see some of these builders start to really kind of embody this live, work, play type of development. I also saw a great joke, like when I was doing my research for this, there's some great posts on Reddit where they think we should add die to the end. I mean, it's a little satire that they're like, why don't we just do live, work, play, die? You never even have to leave. So they had a few things to say about it. I think that's just because some people feel like this has been over advertised. But really, you got to kind of look at where can we find land, and then where can we find, a lot of this comes down to zoning. And so the cities are having to change the zoning. Like when you look at like the Falls, for instance, where they went in, that was a commercially zoned piece. And I know they had to go through some zoning changes to get it to more of like a mixed use type development. There's not a lot of mixed use in Tri-Cities.
So
now,
they'd have to rezone something to allow this.
Correct. And the cities are having to add language and change some of the ordinances they have that allow this to happen together. Because you can't just have a residential zoning or just a commercial zoning and then shove a building into this that works. It doesn't work like that. Like you have to have approvals on multiple fronts to do it. I love seeing these builders and these developers kind of take the next step and bring some of this to Tri-Cities. Now, there could be some negatives to it. Like if people look at this concept, what do they not like about it? So the number one thing that I hear from people is a lack of privacy. So in case you haven't noticed, Tri-Cities is it's a fairly private community. Like if I'm showing somebody houses and there's like, oh man, that 2-story behind me, they look right into my backyard, or these are the type of things that people will say that they don't like, or the neighbors are too close and we'd like a little more space, or I moved to this cul-de-sac because I didn't want traffic coming down here. I got that just last week. And so the one thing is when you're in a live, work, play community and things are a little bit tighter, like things are packed in a little bit more and you got businesses, and you are going to run into the same people all the time. And a lot of people love this. Like, I mean, I could name like 4 people in my office that I'm like, they would think this is the greatest thing on earth.
Okay.
But if you're an introvert, this might not be the best choice for you. So that's one of the negatives that I hear about live, work, play communities. The second thing that I've got down, and I mean, this might just be a Tri-Cities thing, but people here, people here love their cars.
Yeah.
Like most have too many, probably. I mean, and I'm not saying too many. I mean, that's what I hear people say. You can have as many cars as you want, but a lot of times, like, people will have a second car, and then the kids will turn 16, and then they've got cars, and they've got 2 kids. And so you've got 7 cars. Well, I'll tell you what, like a live, work, play community that's got commercial built into it and multiple of these units, it's not easy for parking. Like, parking is a premium because you're also trying to put these developments in a place where you can walk to the grocery stores or you can walk to the Coliseum. And in general, I would say activities in Tri-Cities, this is the only why you didn't see this naturally in what a secondary market. Like the kids' sports are like out at the sports complex in Pasco at track, and I live in Kennewick, and then we've got to go out to Badger South. And so we are still a very drivable community with not a high participation rate in public transportation. And so that is another thing that you see that kind of prohibits development of these type of communities. And then thirdly that I have down for this is the higher cost, because there's just no way around it. If you're looking at these communities that have a great community center with a pool, and they have a fitness center, and they have a playground. Okay, somebody has to maintain all of that. And there is a cost that comes along with that. That's either going to be in the HOA dues, or it's going to be, it's going to be in the upfront cost that you have. And so it's a balancing act, but there is likely going to be a higher cost to go into a development like that. But when you look around Tri-Cities, you've got some great examples of this. I already talked about, Horn Rapids out there. You've got Gulf, and you've got, close to Hanford, and now they've put in some community centers, so you didn't have to leave. I think the biggest thing they were lacking, both Horn Rapids and Badger South, is that they were missing a little bit on some of the amenities of that, because one of the things is it's harder to get to a grocery store. There's not a real close grocery store to Horn Rapids or Badger South in those situations.
Yeah.
And so it took a little while for these things to kind of get off the ground there. Vista Field has spent a lot of time, money, developments. If you go through their CC&R packages, they're finally starting to break ground on some of the buildings out there. But Vista Field is trying to be a poster child for this type of development as well. Close to the Coliseum, close to events. They've got restaurants and bars that they've announced, that they're trying to do deals with to go in there. You've got studios on lower levels with living quarters above. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how that works. But I wouldn't say that it's been a lightning fast start, because this takes a lot of time. And if you don't get it right in the beginning, you don't get a chance to get a redo.
Yeah.
So Vista Field's another example of this.
Looks really nice what they've done, though.
It's going to be and they're sticking to it. They have not gone out, but you're right. And John, we talked, a little bit off air about the Performing Arts Center, and a lot of things have been floated around there, and they're really working hard to get it right. Another section of this that comes really close to this is Columbia Point. Columbia Point's pretty close. You've got a mix of condos. You've got different size units out there. You've got the restaurants. You've got the river. Now they have, you've got Winco and the grocery stores and Starbucks. Columbia Point is really a really close example of this that's been done right, that people can also, a lot of people that come into town, that are used to this in a more urban environment, I take them to Columbia Point and show them condos and that type of stuff, and they are really impressed with that, especially if they're coming from a bigger city. So we've got a lot of good things going for us here in Tri-Cities with this live, work, play environment, and announcements of more subdivisions and developments coming that I think you're going to see a little bit more of it. It's not for everybody. But it is so nice to start having some of these additional development options, and people that are moving from out of state and from bigger markets are starting to notice. And so if you have any questions about what you heard here today, or our thoughts on that, or you're just looking at potentially selling and downsizing to one of these live, work, play markets, go to kenmoreteam.com, shoot us a message. We are doing a ton of pre-spring market evaluations right now. People are wanting to know, Lance, what can I list the house and sell for? I'm getting ready. We're getting those spring calls right now. I'm getting ready to put the house on the market in March or April. So give us a call, get in the queue, and we'd love to give you an analysis and help you out with that. And we will be right back here next week answering to see if our predictions were correct for the Super Bowl.